I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Holly Wade. Holly is the Director of Research and Policy Analysis for NFIB, where she conducts original research and studies public policy effects on small businesses. She produces NFIB's monthly Small Business Economic Trend Survey and surveys on topics related to small business operations. Holly is also a member of the Board of Directors of the National Association for Business Economics, and she has undergraduate degrees in political science and sociology from the University of Washington. She also holds a Master's of Public Policy from the University of Denver. I am looking forward to hearing what Holly has to say. I heard her first on a National Main Street webinar, and I thought that it would be great for her to share information with all of you. So I'm going to turn it over to Holly now. Thanks, Holly.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Thank you for the invitation, and it's wonderful to be with everybody this morning. The National Federation of Independent Business, just for a little bit of background, is the largest small business advocacy association, where we represent about 300,000 small business owners across the country. And in the Research Center, we spend a lot of time looking at economic trends of small business sector and different operations. So we've looked at payments and how small businesses deal with regulations and taxes, compliance, and things like that. So, but right now we are in the land of COVID, and we've spent a lot of time looking at the different issues that are related to small business owners, whether it's some of the new mandates that are required, but also the lending programs, the two lending programs that are specifically targeted for small businesses. And so I thought I would go through some of these now and talk a little bit about the programs, where they stand, and some of the provisions and some of the latest guidance that we've received, and also, unfortunately, some of the guidance that we're still waiting for. So let's get started. My disclaimer, of course, is just providing the information as best we understand it now. For more specific and targeted information specific to your business, we certainly suggest talking with a tax professional or an attorney for particular issues or problems. So starting out, just to go over the three congressional responses, the three-phased responses beginning of COVID-19 and relief efforts. The first response was the Coronavirus Preparedness and Response Supplemental Appropriations Act. That was passed March 6th, which just seems absolutely forever ago now. But this first initial relief effort, the area that was specific to small businesses was the added funding to support $7 billion in the economic injury disaster loans that are available through the SBA. So that was the first initial funding effort that was targeted to small business owners as part of the EIDL program that they expanded to include relief for coronavirus disruptions. The second piece of legislation was more focused towards paid leave, unemployment, food assistance, and that was the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And this legislation included a few of the mandates. So the paid sick leave mandate that those businesses under 500 are required to offer expanded paid sick leave, and also the expanded family medical leave that is required of businesses under 500 employees. And that was soon after the first relief effort, and this was passed on March 18th. And we'll go over some of those specific provisions in a bit. The third phase was that $2 trillion of relief effort that included the program or the development of the payment protection program loans and also the EIDL grant, the emergency grant that was included. So those two programs were from phase 3, the CARES Act. And that was passed into law March 27th. So many pieces of legislation kind of in rapid order, providing stimulus for individuals through the expanded UI, through direct payments, but also in developing these targeted small business loan programs. And then we have the most recent, the phase 3.5, as we call it, the Paycheck Protection Program and Healthcare Enactment Act. And this was the second round of funding for the PPP loan program. The initial funding didn't last very long. We certainly knew that there was huge demand for these programs. We started hearing from small business owners that that was their most pressing issue is getting some financial relief and support. And so the program was widely popular, obviously, with many small business owners trying to apply for these loans. Had a bit of a rocky start trying to find a lender to apply for the loan, but that did ease up after SBA approved of more lenders, so that was helpful in facilitating these loans. But the dollars for the first round of funding did run out fairly quickly, and the second round of funding, $310 billion designated to for additional support for the PPP loan. That there is an update with that, but they also did include additional money for the EIDL disaster loan, another $50 billion, and $10 billion more for the EIDL emergency grant funding. So all of these programs unfortunately ran out of funding through the first round really quickly. And so this was some added support and help that they provided in the last piece of legislation. There is talk about phase 4 of support that will likely include some assistance to state and local governments. There is talk about either another small business type of financial support program or lending program. And then there is also the mention of some corrections, but some flexibility provisions of the PPP loan program and additional funding. So we'll see how it goes from here as far as discussion and support of some of those provisions in phase 4. Likely won't happen until after the end of May. So this round of congressional action will likely take longer than the first 3 or 4 actually pieces of legislation. This one will take a bit longer, but we're certainly closely looking at what lawmakers are looking to include in this one, and hopefully it will include more financial support and then some adjustments to the program to make it more flexible in the terms and conditions for small business owners to comply with, especially the forgiveness elements of the PPP loan, which many are already in that 8-week period. So looking at the economic injury disaster loan, the EIDL loan, this was again the loan program where small business owners could apply directly through the SBA, provided working capital loans of up to $2 million at a 3.75% interest. The loans smaller than $200,000 were approved with no personal guarantee, no penalty for prepayment, and up to a 30-year loan. The idle eligible expenses include payroll, and that also includes benefits, so health insurance benefits, retirement benefits, and fixed debt obligations, so mortgage and rents and leases. Those expenses that would be included in accounts payable, and then other bills that would be part of business operation expenses. So the idle loan it was very popular for small business owners in that it allowed for a wider range of eligible expenses to be used with those loan dollars. But the idle loan is a straight loan. There is no forgiveness part of it, except for the emergency idle grant. So this was part of the CARES Act that they allocated or appropriated money for up to $10,000, which did turn into a grant that was limited to $1,000 per employee because of the huge demand for the idle loan. So when you applied for the idle loan, you could request a emergency grant. It was supposed to be an emergency advance in that you would receive it 3 days after applying. That didn't happen. Unfortunately, it was many weeks after businesses were applying that they started receiving the grant. Many still haven't received it. We just recently produced a survey of a random sample of our membership, and of all of those who applied for the emergency grant, only about half have received the grant itself. Only less than 10% have received the actual idle loan. So I wanted to throw that out there in case any of you are still waiting for those loans and wondering. I mean, we had many small business owners wondering if they maybe didn't fill out the application properly, and they were surprised that it would take this long. But most small business owners who applied for the idle loan still haven't received the loan, and only about half have received the emergency advance yet. A little bit better story for the PPP loan program, but I did want to give this update for the idle and the idle grant. They did open, so the other update is that the idle loan and grant program are closed to new applicants. So the newly appropriated money for that program was basically used for all of those who had already applied and in the queue. So those who still haven't received the money, the newly appropriated money, will hopefully cover everyone that has already submitted an application, including the loan and the emergency grant. But it is closed to new applicants. They have said that if there is any money left over or the Congress appropriates more money, they will revisit opening that window, because the program does last up until December 31st. So there is still time to refund before the program closes. But right now it is closed to new applications, except for those in agriculture. So in the last piece of legislation, they included agriculture as being qualifying to take out an idle loan. So they did open up that window just for that specific industry of small businesses. So looking at the Paycheck Protection Program loan, the new round of funding, round 2 of funding. The latest update was of last night, and as of Wednesday, May 6th, SBA has processed about 2.4 million loans of the second round of funding, of a total of $184 billion, and that's of the $310 billion in the last piece of legislation, the added support, funding support for the program. So we're about 2/3 of the way, or about more than half of the way in processing those dollars. It appears we've heard from many banks that they have many banks have have processed through kind of their backlog of applications. And so many are still accepting new applications because the funding is still there. And so if you're still interested in a PPP loan, certainly check with your bank to see if they're accepting new applicants. There are also, there are some new fintech type businesses that are accepting applications that have been recently approved to facilitate these loans. So Paychex, Cabbage, or PayPal, sorry, PayPal, Cabbage, Intuit, QuickBooks, all three of them are accepting applications. I believe, I checked yesterday, I believe they all are still accepting applications if your bank that you bank with is not. But there was a lot of conversation about how large the average loans were at the first round of funding for this program. I think the first SBA amount of average loan funding weeks ago was about $200,000. And that was certainly incorporated all of those large businesses that we read about in the media receiving those loans. A lot of that were repaid. So about $2 billion worth of PPP loans were repaid, and they are back in circulation to help more smaller businesses. This last round of funding, the average loan amount was just over $75,000. So it's certainly targeting those smaller Main Street businesses now. And as they get through the process. But again, if you're still interested in a loan, there's opportunity to still apply. There is funding still available. And so, please talk with your bank about that. Who qualifies for the PPP loan? So they cast a wide net on eligibility for this program. Businesses with less than 500 employees, independently owned franchises with under 500 employees, and then for accommodations and food services, and AICS code 72, I believe, it was under 500 employees for each location. And then they also included sole proprietors, independent contractors, and self-employed individuals. It's a different way of calculating your payroll or your income with those categories. I'll talk just a second about that in a bit. And then 501c3s are also eligible. And one of the other stipulations is that you had to have been in business and pay taxes as of February 15th. The terms of this loan are pretty different from the EIDL loan. You can defer loan payments for 6 months starting at the time of origination of the loan. The interest of the loan does accrue over that time, but you are allowed to defer it for 6 months. It is a flat 1% interest loan, so that's why it was very attractive for many, having a very low interest loan for a 2-year time frame. But when we've surveyed our small business owners, NFIB members, the vast majority weren't looking at the loan program for the low interest loan. They were certainly looking at the loan program for the forgiveness element that made this program so popular. And I'll touch on that in just a second. But it is a guaranteed, 100% guaranteed loan through the SBA. It didn't require any collateral or personal guarantee. And there is no penalty for prepayment. So how much can you borrow? You can borrow 2.5 times the average monthly payroll for the previous year, up to $10 million. And so the 2.5 is to cover 8 weeks of payroll, and then the 0.5 is to cover all of those extra expenses that you might have under the eligible expenses that are outlined in the program. Payroll includes benefits. It's salaries, commissions, tips, and other similar compensation, which includes bonuses. It is capped at $100,000 for those wages. But then on top of that, you can include employee benefits, including the employer cost share of health insurance premiums and retirement benefits. and also state and local payroll taxes. However, you cannot include federal taxes. So federal taxes are not eligible expenses under this program, but state and local payroll taxes are. For other expenses, interest on mortgage obligations are eligible for the loan program. Rents under a lease agreement, so that could be the building that you're operating your business from. It could include cars or trucks that you're using for business purposes. And then utilities, and utilities include water, electricity, gas, transportation, telephone, and internet. So all of these expenses can be used to pay with the loan. We're still waiting for some guidance from the SBA and Treasury about some of the terms and what's included. For instance, transportation, we're still not clear on what that means, whether this includes gas for business operated trucks and cars, whether, if there are other areas of transportation costs to be included in that, we don't know. Telephone, we don't know whether that also includes cell phones for employees, things like that. So we're still waiting on guidance there, and we're hoping that that comes pretty quickly as people are starting to already spend their PPP loan dollars and are within their 8 weeks of forgiveness. The maximum loan forgiveness amount it can be up to the entire principal of the loan. It is within the 8 weeks of forgiveness period that starts the day you receive the loan, and you can use it for all of those costs, those eligible expenses that we talked about earlier. Also included is the owner compensation replacement. Those who aren't on payroll use net profits as what you would look at for owner compensation. It's line 31 of a Schedule C. I had no idea that there was a line 31 of a Schedule C until this law. I am up to date on my taxes now, though, about where all of this is located on these forms, but it is looking at net profits from your 2019 taxes. And for independent contractors, looking at 1099s, again, Schedule C on 1099 miscellaneous forms. And then the loan amount that you can use is, you're looking at that line 31 net profits, and you divide it by 12. You can use 8 weeks worth of the you can use 8 weeks worth of the 52 weeks, looking at 52 weeks, 8 weeks worth of that Schedule C net profit amount. So the Treasury limits the amount of compensation that you can replace your own wages as far as an owner to only 8 weeks of that amount on line 31 on your Schedule C. And then for forgiveness, maximizing your forgiveness, they will reduce forgiveness amounts. There is a 75-25 rule. You have to spend at least 75% of those expenses on payroll. And you can also, you have to maintain salary levels at 75% or more. So you can't reduce salaries or have reduced salaries more than 25%, or else you will have a straight reduction, payroll reduction for the total forgiveness amounts. And there's also the FTEE not maintained. So if you're looking at the full-time equivalent employees, we still don't know what that parameter is. So we don't know if they're looking at 40 hours a week or 30 hours a week. That will hopefully be in guidance coming up. But you need to basically maintain workforce levels now in that 8-week period as you did in pre-crisis. If there is a reduction in the number of FTEs, then there is forgiveness amount will be reduced. So there are some provisions here. Also, the EIDL grant. So there are two separate programs, obviously, the EIDL program and the PPP program. However, when it comes to forgiveness, the EIDL emergency grant, if you received that and you also received a PPP loan and have forgivable expenses, the bank will subtract the amount of the grant from the total amount of eligible forgivable expenses. And then that will be your new total for forgiveness. So you can't benefit from both, unfortunately. If you receive the grant, they will subtract that from the top of the total for the eligible forgivable expenses within that 8-week window when you will go back to your bank and apply for forgiveness. And so just to mention briefly, there is alternative funding. So the Federal Reserve Bank has developed a program, the Main Street Lending Program, for those businesses that are looking for larger loans. The minimum size loan is $500,000, yes, it's it's 500,000, not 500 million or 500,000 million. That would be huge. So they have lowered the loan to apply to 500,000, but this is for those larger, small, medium-sized businesses. But this is available, and you would apply for this through your bank. And then there are some other provisions that small business owners can benefit from. The employer can claim 100% tax credit for paid leave required through the Families First. So the paid leave provision is, and the emergency, the expanded family medical leave provisions, you can receive 100% tax credit for that through that program. You can't pay for paid leave or sick leave as through the Families First with the PPP loan. You are able to receive 100% tax credit for those dollars spent on these mandates through that program. And so you looked at IRS guidance for that. Owners can claim a credit in retaining both employers and employees' share of Social Security and Medicare taxes, as well as withhold federal income tax. And there is a link here if you're looking to find out more information about that. And accelerated payments from the IRS. So there are a few provisions here that I just wanted to highlight with links to find more information if you are interested. And then there is the employee retention tax credit, and you can be eligible for payroll tax credit if you keep your employees on payroll, if you paid COVID-19 related sick leave for employees, or if you had to suspend operations. So this is hugely helpful, especially for those who didn't apply for the PPP loan. So you can't use PPP loan and the retention tax credit. So you can't, kind of double up on both of these. But if you didn't apply for the PPP loan, this might also be helpful to look into. And then I wanted to just show this chart that highlights the emergency paid leave requirements in the Families First Act and what employers have to comply with as far as paid leave and the expanded family medical leave. And these are requirements of small businesses under 500 employees. So I just wanted to offer this. I don't think I have time to go through all of this, but basically it just shows what you need to, there's the poster requirement. All of this is required through December 31st for, again, all small business owners with under 500 employees. There are posters that are required that you have to either put up in a visible location where employees can see it, or if your employees are teleworking or otherwise working from not in the business location, you can just email the poster and satisfy that requirement, but you do have to make sure that all employees from now until December 31st receive this poster that highlights their eligibility of these 2 leave mandates related to COVID-19. And you'll have access to the slides and you can take a look at that. The CARES Act also adopted a double or multi-pronged approach to expanded unemployment insurance benefits. So we've had many small business owners asking about the unemployment benefits. They expanded the benefits to workers who would normally not qualify for the programs, but would be working in absence of coronavirus. The federal government has offered up to 39 weeks of eligible benefits, and eligibility for workers now includes those who are self-employed and individuals with limited work histories and independent contractors. So this is the expanded eligibility for the program. It does exclude workers who are able to work from home with pay and receive any form of paid leave. So for those who are able to telework, they are not workers who are able to telework are not eligible for unemployment insurance, but for the most part, they did expand it to include all of those who would be impacted by the coronavirus outbreak, including those who are self-employed and independent contractors. They also extended the benefits for certain workers who have quit their jobs for reasons pertaining to the coronavirus. It applies to those who contracted the virus and those without paid leave benefits who have had to quit their jobs to take care of relatives. It increased unemployment benefit for those eligible employees or those eligible individuals, sorry, so that they would receive the state level unemployment benefits, but also that added $600 a week in federal government assistance that was appropriated in the Families First. And it allows states to provide federally funded unemployment compensation for an additional 13 weeks, bringing the maximum week benefit up from the 26 to, again, 39 weeks. And the $600 expanded benefit from the federal government, that program does end July 31st. And so I thought I would stop there and answer any questions that you might have about the loan program, about the mandated paid sick leave or the expanded family medical leave. Any questions that you have about forgiveness or the intersection between the 2 loan programs, or any other small business related questions that you might have, I'd be happy to answer.
And just so everyone knows, if you have a question, you can send that into the chat box. Again, that chat function is at the bottom of your screen. You can type into there. If you have a question and you would prefer to just ask it directly instead of typing it in, raise your hand and I will call on you. That function is also at the bottom. If you go to reactions, you'll see a little button there where you can raise your hand. I am surprised if we don't have any questions after all of that.
Maybe it is too early out, and I mean, these loan programs, we've certainly been talking to so many small business owners where the forgiveness element of the loan programs are incredibly complicated and confusing once you start working through how to spend these loan dollars. Treasury just released guidance the other day about getting those full-time equivalent numbers back up within that 8-week period so that you can maximize loan forgiveness. They did offer some flexibility related to because there is kind of the competing programs. There's the PPP program that requires you to increase those workforce levels to pre-crisis. And then there's the unemployment insurance program that many have filed claims. We just saw that another 3 million have today, or for the last week that was just posted today. And so the small business owners are often having a hard time getting those employees back on payroll, or those former employees back on payroll. The Treasury Department has offered some flexibility related to that, in that if you extend a job offer and the person replies to say that they are not coming back and they decline the offer, that qualifies as one full-time, if it's a full-time position, one full-time equivalent person that is not part of the reduced workforce numbers. So you would just, when you go back to apply for loan forgiveness, you would provide that documentation to the bank, and that would help satisfy that criteria of getting those full-time equivalents back up. Another update for the PPP loan, the IRS, that was, so the Treasury flexibility was the good news. The IRS update was part of the bad news, unfortunately, in that one of the other benefits for the PPP loan was those expenses that were forgiven in the 8 weeks, they were excluded from federal taxes. So you didn't have to pay taxes on that loan, those loan dollars that were forgiven. However, the IRS did decide that you wouldn't be able to deduct those expenses at the back end. So normal business deductions, you would have to exclude those dollars from business deductions on the back end. So and they considered that double dipping. So it's not taxed on the front end, but you are not able to deduct those expenses as a regular business deduction on the back end. So those are two of the latest updates related to the PPP loan program, and I'm sure there will be more to come, hopefully allowing some more flexibilities on how to spend those dollars.
Okay. I do see that we've got a couple of comments and questions in the chat. This presentation will be available. I will email you a link to that. We have also recorded the entire presentation, and that will be available next week on our website, invest.georgetown.org. There is a question that if you could repeat where they could go to get guidelines on loan forgiveness.
Oh, sure. So the Treasury Department, treasury.gov, at the top has a banner and it says Corona-related information. They have a fact sheet on the PPP loan program. Also, NFIB has a resource guide. We have a side-by-side of the two loan programs and what eligible expenses and forgiveness. Also, if you have, I can send you some helpful resources that highlight specifics about the forgiveness. You can certainly email me directly. It's holly.wade@nfib.org, and I'd be happy to send those over to you.
And I'll include her email in the follow-up just in case you didn't get that. There's another question. Where did you say that they could get the FMLA Families First poster?
So the Families First poster on the DOL, Department of Labor's website, they have a link to a PDF of the poster itself, and you can just save that and use that and send that to as an attachment in an email to your employees, or just print it out and post it somewhere in your business. But it is on the DOL website, and I can, I believe it's pretty easy to find on their website. But again, I can send that over to you also.
Okay, great. Another question, are there provisions for an employer to get a deduction for the purchase of PPE for themselves, employees, and independent contractors working at their site?
So that would just be a regular business deduction for those, for that equipment. Yes, so a regular business deduction you can, for that equipment. You cannot, however, use the PPP loan if those loan funds, that would not be an eligible expense. We've had a number of questions from other small business owners about that. So unfortunately, you can't use the loan dollars for the PPP program for those expenses, but you can deduct those expenses for a regular business deduction. You can also, I believe, use the dollars from the EIDL loan for those purchases, but not the PPP loan.
Okay, great. Another question. If a small business was able to get a local grant, say from the city, the chamber, county, something along those lines, do you know if the IRS considers this as income?
That I don't know. Most grants are taxed as income and would be included in income. That was kind of a special provision with the PPP loan, that it was excludable, or that the forgiveness part was excluded. But I believe for the most part, yes, that it is considered income. But I would check with the details of the program itself, and to talk with the tax professional. But as I understand it, that those likely would be taxable income.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I think I got all of the questions that were typed into the chat box. Looks like. Well, we'll give it maybe another minute or so. If anyone has a question, remember you can raise your hand, you can chat in the box, and we will try our best to answer. Oh, you have a comment that the information was very helpful. Thank you.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's it's interesting talking to small business owners about some of these programs and the different mandates that are new to comply with, and all of the details and information. And it is often so overwhelming and confusing. So I certainly, if there are additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them as best as I can. It changes so fast with kind of the different types of guidance that are issued on a regular basis from IRS and Treasury and the SBA about these loan programs, or DOL about the mandates. So if you have any questions, in the future, certainly welcome to, contact me and ask.
Okay. Oh, it looks like we have one more question.
Okay.
What if I was in the process of starting a business when all of this started? Can I apply for the EIDL still?
So I can't remember what the requirements are for the EIDL. I can look to see. I believe it's on our side-by-side loan program fact sheet that's located on the NFIB.com website. But I'm not certain. I believe that there is a requirement that you have to have been in business before some date, but I can't remember what date that is. I know for the PPP loan, it is February 15th, but I think there is a requirement or to qualify for an EIDL loan also. But for the EIDL loan, it is closed to new applicants unless you're in the agriculture business. So I just wanted to highlight that. But I can certainly look to see. I believe actually I think it's January 1st that you had to have been in business to qualify for that program.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that has all of the questions answered. Someone else just wanted to say thank you for consolidating this information, because, there are so many questions out there and so much misinformation is spread. So, we all appreciate you just taking the time to provide some clarification and some insight and more details on a more relatable, personable conversation versus, trying to figure it out on our own. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, well, I just want to say once again, thank you, Holly, and thank you to everyone that joined us this morning. The presentation will be available next week. We have this fully recorded, and if you have further questions, I'll also include information that if you want to contact Holly with a more specific question, she has offered to do that as well. And of course, me and the rest of our economic development team is available if you have any questions. I hope that you have a great rest of the week, and thanks again for joining us.